take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the globe to bring you the latest developments in medical cannabis, adult marijuana, industrial hemp, and spiritual ganja.
We love the herb.
It's time for the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville. Now, here's your host, Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Thursday, July 20th, 2017, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Welcome to the program. We've got a jam-packed episode for you today. Plenty of news, statistics, and information about our favorite plant, cannabis sativa L. Coming up in the cannabis headline news, we'll tell you all about a secret meeting that took place in Colorado Springs with members of the Federal Drug Enforcement Administration. Then we'll get to our Voice of the Industry segment with the National Cannabis Industries Association. They spoke with Colin Bell from Growcentia, which is a soil company founded by soil microbiologists. Very interesting discussion there. In drug war data mining, I will implore Arizona's senior senator John McCain to please look at the data, look at the studies, look at the clinical trials with the use of cannabinoids against glioblastoma, the brain cancer he has been diagnosed with. In cannabis sports medicine, we'll hear from former NFL tight end with the New Orleans Saints, Boo Williams, at the Boston Freedom Rally, along with Dr. Uma Dhanabalan talking about the endocannabinoid system. And then in the radical rant, I will complain about Massachusetts copying the worst ideas from Oregon's marijuana legalization. That's all coming up today on the Marijuana Agenda. But first, let's get to the cannabis headline news.
This is your Cannabis Headline News. Brought to you by MarijuanaMoment.net, the complete source for all your marijuana news in one morning newsletter from marijuana majority founder Tom Angel. Subscribe today for free at MarijuanaMoment.net.
This is your Cannabis Headline News for Thursday, July 20th, 2017. I'm Russ Belville. KKTV 11 News has confirmed that a meeting took place Wednesday between several federal agencies, including representatives of the Department of Justice, the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy, Vice President Mike Pence's office, and the Drug Enforcement Administration, along with the mayor and police chief of Colorado Springs over the topic of marijuana. Colorado Springs Mayor John Suthers says the federal representatives didn't want the meeting to be open to the public. Suthers says his stance on legal recreational marijuana remains the same, saying, quote, "We should be very proud about our designation as a great American defense community. To keep a military-friendly reputation with the DoD, I don't think embracing getting high for fun would be a good message." With Nevada suffering a shortage of legalized marijuana, the Los Angeles Times reports California's state pot czar said Wednesday that efforts are being made in her state to make sure sufficient licenses go to farmers, testers, and distributors to supply retailers. Providing temporary 4-month licenses to support some businesses, including growers, is planned, quote, "so we don't have a break in the supply chain," end quote. Lori Ajax, chief of the Bureau of Medical Cannabis Regulation, said in testimony at a legislative hearing. Legal sales began July 1st in Nevada, but it immediately became clear there was not enough supply to meet demand, in part because of unique rules that provide alcohol wholesalers exclusive distributor rights. California does not have the same limits on who can distribute cannabis. In California, licensing to grow, test, distribute, and sell marijuana for recreational use is required by law to begin January 2nd, but Ajax told lawmakers her agency will make sure that sufficient licenses are provided to growers and testers before the start of the year. As more U.S. states legalize marijuana use, 45% of Americans say in a new Gallup poll that they have tried marijuana at least once, a new high in Gallup's trend since 1969. When Gallup first asked this question in 1969, only 4% said they had tried marijuana. The rise in use over the past 5 decades has paralleled the increasing support for legalization. Last year, 60% said pot should be legal, a record high. 8 states allow recreational marijuana use, and these states comprise 1/5 of the United States population. A separate question finds 12% of Americans saying they currently smoke marijuana, far less than those who say they have tried the herb, but roughly equal to the proportion of the U.S. population that is African American. 13% of men say they smoke pot compared to 7% of women. 18% of those aged 18 to 29 say they currently smoke marijuana. A new law goes into effect Sunday in Washington that greatly restricts the placement and manner of advertising by marijuana businesses. King 5 News reports State Senator Ann Rivers, who sponsored the bill restricting marijuana business advertising, says the regulation is akin to restrictions put on alcohol and tobacco industries, and anyone who thinks that marijuana is different is, quote, naive to think otherwise, end quote. Signs must indicate the marijuana products are for people 21 and older and may not show pictures of pot plants or use movie or cartoon characters. Stores can only have 2 signs, no more than 1,600 square inches total. Stores are forbidden from utilizing sign spinners, sandwich boards, inflatables, persons in costume, or any other outdoor advertising but billboards. Transit advertising is prohibited on or in public or private vehicles, and at bus stops, taxi stands, transportation waiting areas, train stations, and airports. This includes vinyl-wrapped vehicles, logoed delivery vehicles, and company cars. The Pomona, California City Council gave preliminary approval Monday to a proposed ordinance requiring permits for the indoor cultivation of marijuana for personal use, according to a report in the Californian. The proposal also prohibits smoking in public places, including the courtyards of residences or apartment complexes and places that are visible from outside the property, according to a city staff report. The proposed ordinance was approved unanimously. This has been your Cannabis Headline News for Thursday, July 20th, 2017. I'm Russ Belville.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
Looking for the 420 friendliest way to visit beautiful legal Potland, Oregon?
I'm Lori Duckworth, inviting you to come stay with us at Delta 9 House and Studios.
You get your own private room with queen bed and access to our high-speed Wi-Fi, premium entertainment system, and more.
We'll even cook you breakfast. Look us up on Facebook at Delta 9 House.
That's facebook.com/Delta9House. Delta 9 House is booked through Airbnb.com. City of Portland permit number 17-159855.
You're not high. You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
We need to say, as Nancy Reagan said, just say no. Don't do it. There's no excuse for this.
Okay, maybe you're a little high.
Hi, I'm Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda. Please help support my independent cannabis radio journalism by becoming a patron of the Marijuana Agenda. Just log on to mjagenda.com and click the Become a Patron button. For your $4.20 monthly donation, you'll keep our free live YouTube show on the air and receive your own private podcast feed of the first hour. For just $9.99, you'll receive both hours of the show and special downloads only available for VIPs. Thank you for your support.
The National Cannabis Industry Association is the leader in the emerging world of marijuana business. Today, we feature highlights from NCIA's successful podcast on CannabisRadio.com to bring attention to the issues and entrepreneurs creating the fastest growing industry on earth. Learn more as we take a listen to the voice of the industry.
This is your host, Bethany Moore, and I'm the Communications and Projects Manager here at the National Cannabis Industry Association. So today I have a guest. His name is Colin Bell. He's from the NCIA member company called Growcentia. Growcentia was founded by a group of soil microbiologists from Colorado State University. So welcome to the show, Colin. How are you today?
I'm really good, Bethany. Thank you very much for having us on.
Yeah, definitely. So let's just go ahead and start by introducing you to our listeners. Tell me about your background and how you got involved in the cannabis industry and movement. What brought you here?
Yeah, thanks very much. So my background is I have a PhD in soil microbiology, and I was a research scientist at Colorado State University. We were very successful at publishing basic science papers, and as a metric of success, scientists kind of gauge that by their publications. And so we did that very well. We got a lot of grants, and we asked a lot of great questions. My area of expertise is in plant microbe interactions, and our goal was always to better understand soil processes and ultimately to think about ways that we could improve practices for farmers to integrate more microbial processes into their grows. Ultimately,
awesome.
Yeah, thank you. So ultimately, after doing that for years and being successful as a scientist, we kind of started reflecting on our impact to actually help farmers the way we thought we were doing. And we realized we probably weren't making the impact that we could. So in late 2013, we decided to make a change. We started thinking about real problems that farmers were facing, thinking about ways that we could develop solutions for those, and ultimately switched our lab around, started thinking about making solutions, microbial solutions, that we could target to help address problems for farmers in the real world.
Okay, yeah. So you're not necessarily worried about growing plants in space, but what's actually happening here on planet Earth.
That's right. And we always focus as scientists on these problem solution scenarios. But it was very interesting when we started thinking about it from a basic science perspective to an applied science perspective on how little we were actually trained to make real applications. You could ask a lot of very interesting science questions, but we realized there was a huge gap in knowledge from academia to understand what it took to make a real technology that was effective in real world applications. So it was a really interesting experience kind of going through that learning curve and developing technologies ultimately that farmers can use in their real world management.
Okay, so ultimately this brought you to looking at the cannabis farmer specifically and being involved in those processes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, the way we thought about doing this was twofold. In academia, we were thinking about broader agriculture problems, and we found that, nutrient delivery to plants was a problem for farmers across all industries. And we knew as soil microbiologists that microbes were a great solution for that. And so we started developing microbial formulas, natural, organic, formulas that farmers could integrate into their fertigation or nutrient feeding regimes that could allow plants to maximize their nutrient uptake. Ultimately, we found that the technology worked very well. And what we needed to do then was to understand how to deploy it into the markets. So we went about that by actually getting out in the field, leaving the lab, and talking to hundreds of farmers across a lot of different verticals, not only cannabis farmers, but corn farmers and other farmers of wheat, etc., to understand their pain points, to really understand their management practices, to understand best where our technology fit within these different markets and how we could apply them.
Did you have any personal connection to the cannabis movement prior to this, or really you're approaching it from the scientific standpoint?
So personally, it's been integrated in part of my life. I didn't grow up in Colorado. I grew up in West Texas, and there's a lot of very negative connotations to the cannabis industry where my personal views and my friend group did not agree with those, to say the least. I ultimately felt like moving to Colorado would allow me to express and be live in a little more moderate and tolerable society, to say the least, where that might be accepted. But we were really taking this approach from a scientific aspect where we were scientists, we wanted to make an impact, and we felt like ultimately our end goal and kind of our responsibility as scientists is to deliver solutions to real world people. And in the case of our area of expertise, it's farmers. And so that was really how we were thinking about it. And why we chose cannabis was because we realized after talking to a lot of farmers that it took a really long time to get any change. When we would talk to cannabis farmers, though, we realized that they were very innovative. They were very accepting of new technologies, and it was a really easy conversation for them to want to try our technology to help them improve their grows. And so the barrier to adoption was almost non-existent in the cannabis with cannabis producers, whereas we learned quickly as a young startup who had a new technology, it might take 10 years to get any adoption in these broader crops, which we think are equally important to feed the world, such as corn and wheat, etc. But
Sure.
it's really hard as a young startup to wait 10 years before you can actually get any traction.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the cannabis industry in particular is going very quickly. It is self-regulating. It is becoming more and more sophisticated every time I blink my eyes. And it's not as simple as just growing a few plants in your closet or your basement anymore. It's very high tech with the various greenhouses, different kinds of soil technology, which you're mentioning, and ultimately the farmer's going to care about the end result product because that is used as medicine for people, much like you're doing the work on food like corn, which ultimately gets to the tables of people as well. So the farmer himself certainly has the impetus to do everything he can to get the best possible product for our industry, for our patients as well. Growcentia was founded by 3 soil microbiologists. You guys have PhDs in playing in the dirt, which is awesome. So how did you 3 soil microbiologists get together to form this company and do what you're doing? What are your bigger goals again?
Yeah, thanks so much. And so, my 2 co-founders, Matt Wallenstein, Rich Conant, and myself, worked together in academia for years at Colorado State University at the Natural Resource Ecology Lab. And that department is focused and actually houses several world-famous soil scientists. So it's kind of a mecca for soil science and soil microbial ecology, which we specialize in and kind of geek out in, needless to say. We worked on a lot of projects together. I came to Colorado State University as a postdoc in Matt Wallenstein's lab. Then I got promoted to research scientist. And we continued to work together on different projects. We worked very well together, and we're actually just a great team. And as a great team, we continue to ask questions and drive our interest and kind of progress as scientists in the way we think about things and the way we're trying to make our impact. And that journey together, just conducting science, led us to the path that we're on now, where we have the startup company Growcentia, where we're actually in the market developing products actively to bring solutions to growers and cannabis growers in particular. I think that one thing that's really important is nothing happens alone. I know this as a co-founder of a company, Growcentia. I know this in academia and beyond. Your team is everything, and I think the success of any endeavor relies more heavily than anything else on that team. And Matt, Rich, and I made a great team. And not only did we come up with these ideas together to start thinking about making things as scientists that we could deliver to farmers, but we took that effort as a team to learn what we needed to learn. Going into this endeavor, which was brand new for us, we didn't know a lot of things about anything about markets, anything really about developing technologies and the hurdles to market or how to think about an opportunity. And so we engaged in a bunch of different business incubators together throughout 2014 and into 2015 to learn how to think about what it took to develop a business model, for example, to develop a budget, to understand how to get funding to actually support a company. And all these are pretty formulaic, where there's definitely wrong ways and there's definitely clear right ways to go about doing that. And it was just a learning exercise for us. And so we spent an intensive year learning about all these things, which ultimately allowed us to achieve some funding that allowed me to leave the university and start the company in March 2015.
Okay. Yeah. So talking a bit more about that, I think it's very smart you guys went through the business incubators. I'm sure that was an amazing experience. So you're going from academia to the real world marketplace. That must be kind of a gap to launch yourself over, as you've described. So how was it bringing a new product to the market, the real world, out of the university setting?
It was was incredible. And, again, I think we think about it as just acknowledging and embracing what we don't know, and then going out and finding those answers and finding solutions. Because I'll tell you, as a startup, or even in the stages to create our startup, Growcentia, we got challenged on a daily basis with things, with problems that seemed insurmountable that we didn't know how to solve, partially because we didn't have the experience. And there's just a lot to starting companies on the technical side and on just the business side. What we learned is you'll only fail if you stop. And so we just kept on driving. I think it takes a lot of grit, and it takes a lot of just real humility to know, hey, we don't know this stuff. Let's get some help. And so that goes back to the team. I left the university in March 2015, just me, and my goal was to get a small team on the ground, to get commercialization and production up, and to get to market. And that's about all the money we had room to do. And I was luckily successful to do that. I started in a one-car garage in a little rental house with a buddy we ultimately, that summer, I found a transmission shop that was about 2,500 square feet that these guys moved out of. And my son and I cleaned that up, turned that into our bioproduction facility. I had 5 team members that I basically found off of Craigslist, taught them as much as I could possibly teach them about, growing microbes, about shipping, which I kind of made up, about packaging, which I kind of made up along the way. I got a sales guy that came from the industry, which was very helpful in us thinking about how we're going to execute our business plan into the market. Uh-huh. And at the end of the day, I'm back there making product. I'm showing people, I'm teaching people and supporting them as much as possible. Then I'm hitting the road with my sales guy, and we're basically going door to door at retail shops, hydro retail shops, educating people about our product to see if they'd be interested in trying it.
Wow,
and that
that's
was in
a change
Colorado.
of pace.
It was incredible. And, just a year before that, I was in the lab thinking maybe one day, we can make people's lives better with a technology like this. And then a year later, I'm an outside sales guy for my company, starting to execute. So it's been quite a ride, and it hasn't stopped at all, to say the least. We're now selling Mammoth P in over 500 stores in over 40 states.
This episode was produced as part of the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville, the daily news and interview podcast covering the world of medical cannabis, adult marijuana, industrial hemp, and spiritual ganja. MJAgenda.com.
If you work in the cannabis industry, consume marijuana, or just support freedom, you need to know about breaking policy news that affects you. Marijuana Moment is the daily newsletter that helps you stay on top of all the latest and most important state, federal, and international cannabis developments. Brought to you by longtime legalization activist Tom Angel, Marijuana Moment puts a concise yet comprehensive overview of cannabis news in your inbox early every weekday morning. Wake up to Marijuana Moment and rest assured you'll be ready for the cannabis news that's driving the day. Subscribe now at marijuanamoment.net.
The Marijuana Agenda, like the conservative agenda, minus the hypocrisy.
I'm Russ Belville with the Marijuana Agenda. Join me every 4 weeks for Cultivator's Corner with Jorge Cervantes from marijuanagrowing.com. Learn more at mjagenda.com/about. And now, in the interest of fair and balanced journalism, the Marijuana Agenda presents this anti-drug public service announcement.
Oh, hey everybody, it's me, Mr. Bell. Hey! And you know, when you're in the entertainment business, you have to be traveling coast to coast all the time.
Say, Mr. Bill, you've got a long trip ahead of you. You'll need something to help keep you awake.
Well, I've been really trying to cut down on my coffee lately.
Then how about some drugs?
Oh, no, drugs are bad, and you kids out there should never, ever use them.
Oh, come on, try some. So remember, kids, say to drugs.
To combat this sort of reefer madness, listen to the Marijuana Agenda every weekday at mjagenda.com.
Promoting the end of adult cannabis prohibition is easy because we have facts, science, reason, compassion, evidence, truth, and logic on our side. It's even easier when researchers catalog it all for us. Learn how to gather the facts on marijuana use, arrests, seizures, rehabs, drug tests, and more on this edition of Drug War Data Mining.
Well, this goes out to Senator John McCain from Arizona, bona fide war hero, veteran, and currently sitting senator who has been diagnosed with a glioblastoma. This is a type of brain cancer. He went in to have surgery to remove a blood clot from his eye, and during that surgery, they discovered the brain tumor. And Senator, I'd just like to remind you, you live in Arizona. And Arizona has a medical marijuana law for which cancer is a qualifying condition. Sir, you need to begin heavy cannabis oil treatments, a potent dose of whole plant-derived tetrahydrocannabinol, THC, and cannabidiol, CBD, right now. Yes, right now. Senator McCain, medical marijuana could save your life. Now, I understand I'm biased. I definitely speak to this issue as someone with my own agenda, obviously. So don't listen to me. Listen to the government's own National Cancer Institute. In their cancer.gov website, they write, quote, studies in mice and rats have shown that cannabinoids may inhibit tumor growth by causing cell death, blocking cell growth, and blocking the development of blood vessels needed by tumors to grow. Laboratory and animal studies have shown that cannabinoids may be able to kill cancer cells while protecting normal cells. End quote. Cannabinoids may inhibit tumor growth, Senator. And specifically, regarding glioma, the same National Cancer Institute from our own National Institutes of Health at cancer.gov writes, quote, a laboratory study of cannabidiol, CBD, in human glioma cells showed that when given along with chemotherapy, CBD may make chemotherapy more effective and increase cancer cell death without harming normal cells. Studies in mouse models of cancer showed that CBD together with Delta-9 THC may make chemotherapy more effective, end quote. This treatment is so promising that major pharmaceutical companies, GW Pharmaceuticals, recently, quote, announced positive top-line results from an exploratory phase 2 placebo-controlled clinical study of a proprietary combination of tetrahydrocannabinol, THC, and cannabidiol, CBD, in 21 patients with recurrent glioblastoma multiforme, end quote. In that study, Senator McCain, quote, patients treated with THC CBD had an 83% one-year survival rate compared with 53% for patients in the placebo group, end quote. That translated into survival, quote, greater than 550 days compared with 369 days in the placebo group, end quote. Sadly, we've known that cannabinoids were a promising treatment for cancer since 1974, and specifically regarding glioma since 1998. If not for nearly 5 decades of bipartisan congressional support for marijuana prohibition, sir, we might have numerous FDA-approved cannabinoid prescriptions to treat your cancer by now. But, Senator, you don't have the time to wait for clinical trials and FDA reviews. You need to begin a regimen of cannabis oil treatments now. Look, you're 80 years old, Senator McCain. You've got no political worries. Even supermajorities of Republicans support the medical use of marijuana. Well, perhaps you're concerned about the implications of being a federal elected official breaking the federal law on marijuana. Well, don't be. Last year, your congressional Republican colleague Dana Rohrabacher openly admitted to me on a live microphone in a room full of witnesses to breaking that very same federal law. And he's suffered no repercussions from that action. Even if your integrity and your honor wouldn't let you violate a federal law as a senator, you could always resign. Arizona voters would likely approve a Republican to replace you, so it's not like you'd be betraying the Republican Party in any way. Please, Senator McCain, don't let the failure of marijuana prohibition stop you from pursuing every possible option to save your life. I know from your voting record that you are a vehement drug warrior. You're anti-legalization, anti-medical marijuana, according to your votes. But it's never too late to have a change of heart. It's never too late to be looking death right in the eye and to be desperate enough to be called a hypocrite, desperate enough to change your tune on this issue. It's worth a try, Senator McCain. Do it for your family. Do it for your grandkids. Do it for your wife. Give it a shot. Get on the Arizona Medical Marijuana Program and do everything you can to beat that cancer, sir.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
Hi, I'm Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda. If you're a cannabis brand looking to build trust and awareness within the community, consider becoming a sponsor of this program. Your message will be seen and heard by the most dedicated followers of marijuana policy reform, who are loyal and supportive of those brands that give back to the community. Just log on to mjagenda.com and click the Become a Patron button to learn how your brand can also be featured in my live nationwide appearances. Thank you for your support.
You're not high. You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
I'm astonished to hear people suggest we can solve our heroin crisis. Have you heard this? By having more marijuana.
Okay, maybe you're a little high.
Did you know that each day in the state of Georgia, more than 6 people are diagnosed with HIV? As a person providing life-saving services to those most at risk, I know HIV is preventable. We need more people in this fight, which is why I want you to join me this October in Atlanta for the 2017 Drug Policy Alliance Reform Conference. Join us in the fight to end the drug war. Register now at reformconference.org.
Athletes have long been held out as role models in our society, but now the conflict between societal disapproval of marijuana use and the emerging science of cannabis medicine, especially as it relates to chronic pain and head trauma suffered by football players and martial artists, is leading some athletes to take a stand. The Gridiron Cannabis Coalition presents this edition of Cannabis Sports Medicine.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. Radical Russ here. Day 2 of the 27th annual Boston Freedom Rally. We're here backstage at the main stage with Boo Williams. Played, what was it, 5-6 seasons in the NFL?
I played 6, man. I played 6 with the New Orleans Saints.
Right on, New Orleans Saints. And you were up on stage emceeing, made a couple references to your NFL career and how the players now are recognizing cannabis as something that can be very beneficial for the head trauma. Give folks a little taste of what you're telling the folks.
Man, the thing is, with us athletes, we go through things that most people really don't understand what we go through. You know, we're all beat up and battered, and we just need a little bit of relief. We really don't want to take the pharmaceutical way, but the only way, you know, they force us to do is the pharmaceutical way. So we're looking for more holistic, treatment, and cannabis is really the only way to go. Because if you look at it, you know, athletes are coming up every other day with being tested for marijuana. But what people really didn't know was only 2 sports that test for marijuana and publicly release your name is basketball and football.
Yeah.
But Major League Baseball and hockey and soccer, they don't expose your name or don't test for marijuana.
Wow, that's fantastic news that we get to get these other sports leagues example followed to the NFL and the NBA. Would be a good idea here. You know, it's always strikes me as funny. You know, we see these headlines of guys like Josh Gordon, you know, being sat out a season, gets reduced to 10 games. Von Miller, Super Bowl 50 MVP, had to sit out 4 or 6 games. What do you think of the NFL's attitude toward this, and when are they going to change?
Man, I think the NFL attitude towards athletes using cannabis is really in a negative way, because if they really look at it, we really use it to medicate. You know, we go home, we need it to stop all the fast thinking that's going on throughout our day. We want to be able to stop, slow down, and be able to process what's going on. And cannabis really helps us in that way, because we're usually going 100 miles per hour every day, and you're being taught to not think, only just react. So sometimes you need that little cannabis to help you sit back, think, analyze things, so you can be able to have a nice life.
So not just a painkiller or against concussions, but also the mental aspect of it. Being able to slow things down.
Yes, the mental aspect, and that's the thing that we want to do the most, is slow down so we can be able to soak things in, like this great cannabis freedom rally that we're at.
Yeah.
You know, this is things that you soak up, and you go places like this, and you really, you look at things like this, and you say, man, wow, this is something that's special. But when you're playing professional sports, you're going so fast, you don't even get a chance to even enjoy things like this.
You know, people are getting more and more aware of the concussion issue and the CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Eugene Monroe from the Ravens just retired after 7 years and asked if he'd let his son play football. He's like, I don't know anymore. Do you worry about the future of football as people get more aware of this? And do you think cannabis could save football?
Man, you know what? I say the same thing. You know, I talk to Eugene on a daily basis. Me and him are great friends. And I say the same thing. I don't know if I'm going to let my son play. Because, the game is way much different than when we played it. It's a lot much safer, but at the same time, you have kids that are bigger than me crashing into each other like cars.
Yeah.
So there's really no, really way to end all the injuries that go on. But the thing is, if we put our kids in some different sports like basketball, like golf, like baseball, some of these sports that are not contact sports, we might be able to save some lives. And then just like my slogan says on my shirt, saving lives and changing minds.
Yeah, people got to realize that a Cam Newton or a Ben Roethlisberger quarterback size now is what offensive linemen used to be back in the day. So it's increased the speed and the size, the mass, the collisions. It's just a whole different sport. Do you think there's things the NFL could do? I mean, I hear some old school guys say go back to the leather helmets. What do you think of that?
Man, you know what? You cannot go back to the leather helmets. But you know what? I know some teams that are really taking this tactic and they're running off with it. They're really bringing in rugby players to come and teach NFL guys how to tackle.
Yeah.
Because if you notice, rugby guys don't tackle with their head.
Hell no.
They tackle with their shoulders, and they're very good at it. So they're bringing in a lot of guys to show these guys a different way of tackling. But at the same time, when we're going at 100 miles per hour at opposite directions, when we crash into each other, that's just something that just happens.
Boo Williams, you got Booberry Cares on your shirt here. Tell folks about Booberry.
Man, Booberry Cares is my new athletic CBD line. I'm coming out with the rub, I'm coming out with the vape pen and the oil, and I'm coming out with CBD water, flavored water. So this is, and it's also a brand that's heavily committed in the community. We're also on a tour right now. We're stopping in at the Freedom Rally, and I'm hosting, and this is kicking off the Booberry Cares tour. So from here, we're leaving to go into New York, and we're doing a lot of community service along the way. Children's hospitals, homeless shelters, and things of that nature.
It's Booberry, but bear spelled like a teddy bear, right? Boo, B-E-A-R-Y. Blueberry Cares. Is there a website, Facebook, that kind of stuff?
Yes, you can go to our Facebook page, or you can just type in on Google. You can type in Blueberry Cares, and everything will come up right under that. I'm just really blessed to be in a position where I can be manufacturing my own products and having the first athletic line that's out. And I'm hoping that, the things, that we're doing rubs off on America and other people to where they can get out in the community, use that stage that you have, and change others' lives.
Boo Williams, thanks for speaking out and trying to get some care to the players. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh man, thanks for having me. I'm just having a great time at the rally, and like I said, I wish this could be every day.
Right on, man.
All right.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone. We are backstage at the main stage of the 2016 Boston Freedom Rally, the 27th anniversary. And joining me back here is the lovely Dr. Uma Donabalan. How you doing, Dr. Uma?
I am wonderful, Russ, and it's great to see you here. What an amazing event today again.
She is resplendent in orange today. It's beautiful. And it's a gorgeous day out here in Boston, and you're speaking here pretty soon up on the main stage. And give us your perspective being here as a doctor working with patients in cannabis as this New England area starts to get reform in medical marijuana.
Well, it's a very exciting time here. I think it's a really great opportunity since we do have medical marijuana, and my hope is that we can use cannabis for many patients that don't have the option right now. Again, I always say it's not for everybody, but yet it should be a first-line option. There's a great need for education and to bring the truth out. I really am hoping to get this medicine deschedulized is what I'm hoping for. And it should be just a supplement. People have a deficiency in their endocannabinoid system, and we supplement it. What I'm hoping to educate here today is 3 facts that I want everybody to know. That no deaths from cannabis, 0 overdoses, fatalities. Number 2, that the U.S. government has a patent for cannabinoids as an antioxidant and neuroprotectant, which is part of everybody's life, that they need to know that. And they've had this patent since October of 2003. Yep. And the third thing is that all doctors used to be able to write a prescription for this, and it was in the pharmacopoeia from 1850 to 1942. So it's very important, and we are facing an opioid epidemic right now.
Yes, absolutely. And we're starting to see all this data come in on medical marijuana states. The most recent that I saw, they evaluated auto fatalities, and they looked at the blood tests of the people in auto fatalities, and then those medical marijuana states, they had half the rate of opioids in people's system. Not to say whether opioids cause the wreck or anything, just in general, are people using opioids? Half the opioid use in these medical marijuana states.
Absolutely. We're seeing that actually not just in opioid consumption. We're seeing that in the states that have medical marijuana and the dispensaries. And that's the key part, not just having the law. They need to have a place where the patients can go get their medicine in safe access. That we're seeing a 25% decrease in opioid overdoses. And 3 to 5 years, we're seeing even 30 plus. And we've seen a $165 million decrease in Medicare dollars in the states that have medical marijuana.
How is medical marijuana proceeding here in Massachusetts? I mean, they passed it in 2012.
Well, among the medical community, Mass Medical Society does not support it. They don't support medical marijuana, and they are actually made it very clear that they want people to vote no on question 4. Yet, I think the truth has to be told, and the truth is that this should be a first-line option, not the last resort for our patients.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the opioid overdose and that crisis, and that brings up another subject that's kind of interesting. It's how the DEA just recently scheduled kratom, which I never knew much about personally, but I'd seen it in head shops, never thought twice about it. Now that they've banned it, I'm like, hey, I got to get me some of that.
It's interesting. I just heard about it recently, too. I'm not too familiar. And people were taking this as a supplement.
Yeah.
And now they put it in Schedule 1. I mean, there's so much opportunity that we have here to really open this up. But keeping it in Schedule 1 is not where cannabis belongs, and it doesn't belong in any of the schedules. And I want people to understand the difference between descheduling and rescheduling. If we reschedule it, that means that they would just move it from Schedule 1 to 2 or 3. It would still be in the hands of Big Pharma. I do not want to see this I want to see it deschedulized off of all schedules.
Even more in the hands of Big Pharma, since they wouldn't be restricted by Schedule 1 from processing it.
We would have 85 plus pills for every cannabinoid. They would have a pill in a different form of it. And we want to make people understand we need the whole plant, and I'm really saying cannabis is not an entrance drug. It's an exit drug from pharmaceuticals and narcotics. And I am bold to say that Dr. Uma Dhanabalan, doesn't contribute to the opioid epidemic.
That's so excellent. Question 4 is on the ballot here in Massachusetts. There's 4 other states voting on legalization, 4 other states voting on medical marijuana. As you look in your crystal ball, how soon do you think we can get the descheduling we're looking for?
Well, the voters are going to vote, and so that's very important right now. We want people to get out there first, to get registered, and make sure you actually speak your piece, because that's the most important people to understand that this is their right. Please use it and express it. That's your part of activism. Get involved.
Dr. Uma Dhanabalan, thank you so much for talking to us, and have yourself a great freedom rally.
Thank you very much. Continue to educate, embrace, and empower.
Right.
God bless.
Thank you.
This episode was produced as part of the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville, the daily news and interview podcast covering the world of medical cannabis, adult marijuana, industrial hemp, and spiritual ganja. MJAgenda.com.
The Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville is proudly sponsored by the Marijuana Business Association. The MJBA, called by NBC News the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, is the fastest growing business association and the fastest growing industry in America. I've been working with the MJBA for years, and I personally invite you to join the MJBA. MJBA also publishes the popular MJ Headline News on Facebook and the MJNewsNetwork.com and Marijuana Channel 1 on YouTube. Visit MJBA.net for more details.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
It's like I picked the wrong week to quit smoking.
Learn more at MJAgenda.com.
I'm Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda. Join me every 4 weeks for our Government at Work, the latest in cannabis reform at the local, state, federal, and international level. Learn more at mjagenda.com/about.
Total war against public enemy number one.
10 federal criminal penalties for up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
Marijuana is probably the most dangerous drug.
Legalization is just another word for surrender.
I experimented with marijuana and didn't inhale.
This is not medicine. This is a Cheech and Chong show.
Encourage people to use less drugs.
I am here. That was the point.
I think it would be a mistake to leave.
Negative reports coming out of Colorado.
Good people don't smoke marijuana.
Radical Rant. Once again, we have to ask, what is the point of a statewide initiative if your town gets to ignore it? We got to ask it once again because marijuana is the exception to democracy. It's just too hot for the voters to handle. Legislatures have to step in and make sure we idiots don't mess things up for the state. See, in 2016, the people of Massachusetts voted on question 4 to legalize marijuana, and they did. They passed it with a 54% majority. And it's not like they went into this legalization vote unaware either. Colorado, Washington, Oregon, Alaska, and Washington, D.C. had already done so. They'd already legalized, and the sky had not fallen. So going into it, they had 5 different templates to choose from. So the authors of Massachusetts' legalization plan took their lessons from those states and kept the best ideas and wrote them into the initiative that became question 4. That was passed by a 54% majority. Now, 2 of those ideas for legalization were to, 1, keep the tax rate low, and 2, to require a vote of the public to ban licensees, or pot shops, let's be honest, within a town. Keep the tax rate low, and the people have to vote to ban pot shops. Well, see, the low tax rate part, that was a lesson that Massachusetts picked up from observing the other states that had legalized. Where the taxes are highest, and, well, where home grow is illegal, up there in Washington state, an unregulated underground market in marijuana still thrives. Media reports about operators of legitimate pot shops are chasing unregulated independent weed dealers out of the parking lot, where they're poaching the arriving customers and undercutting the taxed price of marijuana. Well, that just goes to illustrate the point. And it's easy to undercut the tax when the tax in Washington state is 37% at the state level. Then you throw on state sales tax and local taxes that can be as high as 9.9% in certain locales, but average about 8.9%. You've got about 45% taxation on your marijuana in Washington state. Of course, people are going to undercut that tax, and that was the lesson Massachusetts learned. So the people of Massachusetts, when question 4 came around, they said yes, 54% of them, to a national low tax of 12% total on marijuana purchases. 12% total. The excise tax plus the Massachusetts state sales tax, 12% total. So when it came time for the legislature to craft the regulations governing this newly legalized crop, the House decided the people were idiots and set the tax rate at 28%. 28%. Well, why 28%? Well, they claimed they needed to raise that rate to guarantee the regulation of marijuana would pay for itself. Because somehow governing marijuana in Massachusetts must be much more expensive than governing marijuana in Oregon, where the tax rate is 20% total, or Colorado, where the tax rate is 25% total, and where those states are swimming in marijuana tax revenue. There's no fear whatsoever of running out of money to regulate the issue. The Senate, on the other hand, they figured that, hey, when 54% of the people of the state vote for something, that ought to mean something. That ought to carry some weight. So the Senate approved the original national low 12% total tax that 54% of the people voted on. So House passes one bill, Senate passes another bill. They got to reconcile the two bills. To solve this disparity between the 28% House tax and the 12% Senate tax, the compromise was reached that splits the difference. 8 points lower than the House tax and 8 points higher than the Senate tax to set the state total marijuana tax rate at 20%. Now, whether that was intentional or not, Massachusetts' new tax is exactly the same as Oregon's. In both states, the state tax man collects 17% of the take, and the localities get a 3% incentive to allow pot shops to open. And they'll all, it's like up to 3% they can set it, but they will all set it at 3%. So 20% tax total in Massachusetts, just like Oregon. Despite the fact that the people, 54% of them voted for 12% tax, and the Senate wanted a 12% tax. Then, of course, the other part, which is even worse, is that the people of Massachusetts, again, 54% of them, voted that if a town wants to ban a pot shop, they got to put it before a vote of the people of that town to decide. The Senate, they agreed with question 4. They agreed with the majority of the voters and kept that provision intact. Got to have a vote of the people to ban a pot shop. The House, however, decided that the voters of the state were just too stupid to decide whether there should be pot shops in their own towns. Now, can't let the people decide that. Instead, the House decided that the town's elected officials, by a vote that could be as small in some towns as 2-1, should be able to decide pot shop bans for the entire town without a vote of the people. So, to solve this disparity between the Senate and the voters who picked popular vote should decide whether pot is banned, pot shops, To solve the disparity between that and the House that said every town ought to be able to just ban pot shops from their selectmen, their city council, they made a compromise that allows a town to ban pot shops through a vote of its elected officials only if that town voted in the majority against the statewide legalization initiative. Now, the way that works out, there are 351 incorporated towns in Massachusetts. There are 91 of those that voted against the initiative. So, for the voters in those 91 towns who voted along with the 54% majority of the state to require towns to have a vote of the people to ban a pot shop, those voters just had their right to direct democracy stolen away from them by the House. Now, if anything, this compromise is a worse outcome than if we'd have just kept the House's version, where if every town gets to ban, because at least then you could say the state's just ignoring the will of the voters and we stole everybody's right to a local pot shop vote. But by allowing only the pot-hating towns to have this new privilege to ban without public votes, Massachusetts has established a precedent that it not only ignores the statewide initiative majority, but it also caves to the local minority. Massachusetts has now established a precedent that if the locals really, really, really don't like a statewide issue, they can throw a temper tantrum, and the legislature will give them special rights to flout the will of the majority. This, too, is another mirror of what happened in Oregon. In 2015, after we'd passed legalization with a 56% majority, the rural, conservative eastern counties of the state complained that, doggone it, we just had an election in 2014 on pot, and we voted against pot. Why then should we have to have another election to ban pot shops? And members in the House in Massachusetts were making similar arguments. We just had an election. We just voted against this initiative in our town. Why should our town have to have another election to decide whether pot shops are banned? Why can't the places that have already voted that they hate pot just be able to ban it through their city council? Well, besides the fact that the majority of the voters said so, I mean, we should just end the discussion right there, right? The majority of the voters said so. There was a statewide initiative that covers all the state, and your town is in that state, and the voters of the state said that your town has to have a vote to ban pot shops. That's why. Really, that's all the argument we need. But let's go on. Let's go on beyond that. Beyond the fact that the majority of the voters said so, it's because those are two completely different questions now. When marijuana is illegal, before you legalize it, it's prohibited. Illegal marijuana, nobody can grow it, nobody can possess it, nobody can sell it legally. I mean, they do grow it, sell it, and possess it, but nobody's doing it legally, right? Marijuana is illegal. Nobody can do it. So you might be a pot hater, and you might say, no, vote against legalization. We want to keep the status quo. Nobody can have it. Nobody can possess it. Nobody can grow it. Nobody can sell it. No, no, no. But once marijuana gets legalized and everyone can grow and possess it, the frame of the question changes. It's not the same question anymore. You're not having the same vote. You're not voting as to whether or not marijuana should be illegal and nobody can have it. Now people can have it. Now people can grow it. Now that pot's legal, you're voting as to whether your town should at least cash in from the sales of it. Now you're voting as to whether there should be a storefront competition to every local weed dealer in town who can now cultivate and possess without penalty. Here in Oregon, our legislature stole that decision from the people in counties that had voted over 55% against the initiative. In Massachusetts, their legislature stole that decision from the people in 91 towns that voted over 50% against the initiative. I guess we in Oregon can at least say the bar was a little higher. You had to really, really, really hate pot. Just really, really wasn't enough. So now, do the towns in Massachusetts that voted against Governor Charlie Baker get to ignore his executive orders? Do the towns that voted against another initiative, question 3, still get to sell eggs, veal, and pork from animals confined in cages too small to turn around in? Or is it just marijuana where statewide votes don't count statewide in Massachusetts?
Follow MJ Agenda on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, and follow MJ Agenda Show on Twitter. Learn more at mjagenda.com.
That's all the time we got for today. Thanks for joining us. Stay tuned for Hour 2's Toker Talk Radio. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
You grow it, you try it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you try it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth.